What's in a home? A shelter from the rain? A cover from the cold? An engineering diagram? Or an architectural artwork? A finished product? Or a work in progress? A place for a little fun? Or an investment in the future? Well, honestly, it's a bit of all of the above. My question was, could I fit all of that on 6 wheels and a bit of steel?
So why did I build a tiny home? Well, there's a number of reasons. The most obvious just being the cost of living and the cost of housing, especially here on the West Coast. I just have a very strong aversion to living in a unit or a place that's just a copy of 10 other places. You know, you see all these new housing developments going up intended to house a lot of people, and that's great and all, but every single house in an entire street, an entire neighborhood just looks exactly the same with maybe a slightly different coat of paint or color to it, and it just rubs me the wrong way, you know? Of course, being an ecologist, I also have a lot of environmental concerns about taking up more space than you really need, taking up more resources than you need. A small place like this, it's just more efficient. It just lets me do a lot more. I don't need to spend time to take care of something. I want to spend time doing things, building things, harvesting wild edibles, finding neat chunks of driftwood and building stuff with it. That's what I want to be doing. I've also always really had an eye for compact living and compact architecture. It's always fascinated me, even when I'm playing video games, you know, Minecraft, Fallout, whatever it happens to be. I never even build those houses that big anyways, so living in a smaller space just seemed natural to me, I suppose. When did I first learn about tiny homes? Well, I first learned about tiny homes, funny enough, when I was already living in a research cabin out in Creston in British Columbia. I loved living in that research cabin, despite its difficulties, despite the fact that it had zero insulation, so when I first moved in there at the beginning, in the spring, it was really, really cold. And then, of course, the sweltering heat in the summer with very little airflow did not bode well in that place. And yet, I still really think of it fondly. I still remember being out there, being able to wake up to a nice sunrise, and really, really enjoying my time out there. And that's funny enough when I came across the channel, Living Big in a Tiny Home. Of course, Bryce is a fantastic host, and that was also the same summer he passed very close to Creston. I believe he was in Nelson, British Columbia. The same summer I happened to be living in a research cabin. The same summer I discovered what tiny homes were. Kind of just felt like it all lined up. Didn't get a chance to meet him, so hopefully he'll make his way back here one day and I'll get a chance to show him this place. How did I go about designing my tiny home? I had a lot of crazy ideas. I just started drawing them, but I had some general ideas and I knew what limits I had to work within. How many layouts did I draw? I've got a bunch of files on my computer, but a lot of the layouts were just one-offs. I wanted to try an idea and then immediately throw it away. I must have done at least 20 or more serious layouts. You know, the crazy thing is too, I did all of these layouts either with pen and paper or just in Microsoft Paint, which I thought I was going to have to learn AutoCAD, and apparently MS Paint can take you a long ways, and even my builders were pretty impressed that I had any specific plans at all. Apparently that's not common for them, so that's pretty funny. What were my must-haves in my tiny home? Well, I knew for sure I wanted a C-shaped kitchen, which means the kitchen had to be on the far end of the tiny home. Not always a common feature in tiny homes. I wanted a lot of workspace. And honestly, I might have even overdone it. The other thing I knew I wanted from an early stage was a multifunctional table. I didn't just want a breakfast bar, I wanted dinner table that 4 or more people could sit at. But I also wanted the option of having a breakfast bar, so I needed a way to bring both into the design of the house. And lastly, I love gaming, so I knew I needed a good entertainment station for all of my gaming and editing needs.
Oh my god, thank you. You just made my day.
Most based foxhole player ever.
Thanks.
Including editing this video. As for builders, there are a couple of tiny home builders in the Lower Mainland that I talked to, I emailed, had some back and forth with some of the representatives, but I knew I wanted something custom. And while there are quite a few tiny home builders out here, not all of them do custom designs. A couple of them only do their set models. How did I come across Ethical Tiny Homes? My friends notified me that the TradeX Expo in Abbotsford, British Columbia was having a small expo. And as part of it, one half of the expo was a bunch of tiny homes. Not just from one builder, but from several local BC builders. And I thought, man, yeah, I would definitely go to that. It was also the same week my grandfather gifted me $50 for Christmas, and I told him I would put it towards the tiny house, and turns out $50 was enough to get 3 tickets for me and my friends. So we all went to the show, and yeah, browsed a bunch of tiny homes, and the last builder I checked out was Ethical Tiny Homes. And they said they did everything at relatively the same price as all of the other builders that were present, so price wasn't an issue, and they did everything custom exactly to your specs as long as it was within, you know, legal road limits and whatnot. And that was it. From that point on, I was sold. I knew what they were capable of. I saw their tiny home. I knew what I wanted, and I knew that they were going to be the ones to help me achieve it. Was it hard to find a place for the tiny home? Yes, and that is probably what I struggled with the most. I went through dozens and dozens of Facebook Marketplace posts, handing out flyers, asking cities to see if they would let it happen, or ask about specific plots of land that I could find that were being unused. And for the longest time, for months and months and months, there was nothing that would suit my needs or legally allow me to set up a tiny home. That was definitely the hardest part of the process. That definitely weighed a lot on my mind. Yeah, it was a really tough challenge, but eventually, through Facebook Marketplace, I found my current landlord, and he offered me a very reasonable deal. I was more than happy to take it. And so from that point on, now that I had a place that I knew I could rent, now that I knew I had a plan that I was going to go with, and now that I knew that I had a builder, well, now it was time to get to work. I knew it was going to be fast. I knew they could get a tiny house up and running in a few months, but it was a whirlwind of 5 months. And when that first wall was raised, I knew at that point that really there was no turning back.